And in that sense, I would say, yes, he's totally committed. And he gave his commitment.
Your viewers, which puts the Mandela issue in context. If you take a look at the history of Boston real estate, and you take a look at the history of the manipulations of real estate in Boston by the commercial property owners and developers, and also by what is well known in the circles of the elite as the vault, the banking structure of Boston, right? Which is run by the families that have run Boston for, ever since there's been here. Old money we're talking. We're talking that Lowell money, we're talking about the Higginses, we're talking about, that whole crowd, man, the Cabot crowd, the Lodge crowd. We're talking to the people who run the place. If you take a look at it, you find some very interesting things when you want to talk about thievery, for example. Just taking a look, going back a few years, but just for purposes of giving people a little background. If you looked at the 1981 value of real estate in downtown Boston, the commercial properties, a conservative estimate put it at about $3 billion. And if you took the tax rates of that time, there should have been about $335 million paid on that property during that period, $338 million. But actually, during that period of 80-81, when that would come up annually, the city would receive $135 million. Yet this actually occurred. For example, then after that, after the 1980s, the total value of downtown commercial properties doubled in Boston. Yet the 23 largest office buildings in Boston by 1987 were paying only $75 million tax. So they should have been paying $338 million. They didn't pay that. They paid $135 million. 7 years later, even though the value of the property doubled, they were paying $75 million.
So are we talking about a bloody system?
We're talking about bloodsuckers. We're talking about parasites. We're talking about a complete looting of the people, of the flesh, bones, and blood of people. And what happened with Mandela was that Alphonse Mourad, simply having been from the inside, being able to see that game, said, hey, I'm going to tell the people. I'm going to let people know. I think this is wrong. Oh, I'm not against people making a profit, but this is usury. This is parasitism, and this should not be allowed.
So, Dennis, are you saying that even though Alphonse Mourad is no longer representing the management for the Mandela complex, the information that Al Mourad has gathered in many ways has opened a whole window of understanding around affordable housing, and has opened a whole nother window of understanding around tenant ownership. It has also spearheaded a major movement.
Well, I would say, yes, I would say that. I also say something else, which might be interesting to viewers in Boston. A lot of people might want to criticize Al or anyone else for mistakes made or flaws in research or flaws in what they did and flaws in how they handle some court case or whatever. Have you ever been in a battle, a real battle, of the type that you're dealing with these types of people? You're talking about bringing an arsenal of resources to that battle that is way beyond the capacity of any single individual. You've got to have a movement to handle this kind of problem. Okay? Only when you had Dr. Martin Luther King and that movement of the civil rights period could you even get the right to vote for people in places like Alabama and Mississippi, though everybody in the country knew they should have the right to vote.
Yes.
So even when you're dealing with something as explicit as that, you need a movement. How much more do you need a movement in this case where you've got these complexities around real estate and changes of law and regulations and who's paying who? You've got something really, really complicated here. Yes. So we've got to understand that what we've got to do is not try to look at all of the things that may have been flawed about what any individual has done, because we're all flawed. That was the reason for having the Atonement March last year. It was for everybody to get up and to admit, hey, we've all done things wrong. We know that. But to rather say, what happens when we combine as a movement? I think what Reverend Bevel said before, concerning that issue and the nature of that question is really what brings us all together and brings us all together around even a person like, for example, Minister Farrakhan, who is controversial to some. To me, he's my brother. I've spent time with the man. I criticized the man. I took my criticism to him. I found out the things I had thought were true were false. I had to correct what I knew. There were some things that he thought about our organization and Mr. LaRouche that were not precisely right. He corrected those things. That's how a movement grows. That's how people grow. That's what America is supposed to be about. So I see the battle for tenant ownership, for the non-warehousing of people, which is what is done by this big old money as we talked about it. That battle is a battle of everybody, and all of us should be committed to that.
So what you're saying, Dennis, is that this is more or less a people movement. It has very little to do with race, creed, color, religious or theological or philosophical aspects. We're talking about something here that will impact the lives of people across this country, but more or less people of color. I think that's the main issue here. The things you're doing for the tenants in Mandela, and also which is uplifting the community. And when I looked at some of these documents, I felt that this was a...
My name is Alphonse Mourad. I'm the former owner of the Mandela Developments. I owned the development since 1981 till the 1996 when I was put into a trusteeship in the bankruptcy court. I want to share with you a rebuttal of the celebration that's taken place at Roxbury Community College, which Governor Salucci and Mayor Menino and other representatives and Mr. Howard Cohen, who's the owner today with the co-op, who was able to achieve the tax credit and work with the residents, and every one of them is looking for a victory that has taken all this team to put together. After 15 years, they believe there will be a tenant ownership. My perspective as an owner and as a Middle Eastern developer, I have lived probably in one of the most racist city in Boston, which basically more racist than anywhere in America or in an international world. This city here is well controlled, and it's well controlled by Jewish developers who's basically taken advantage of affordable housing and poor neighborhood, and they are in the process of gentrifying Lower Roxbury and Roxbury to build a brand new annex city to downtown Boston, maximizing the land value and to displace the entire black culture, and the high-rise buildings in the future are so expensive that none of the culture could ever come back or afford to live on the valuable land. This is why the Beacon Management Company, they are the $5 billion real estate owners and managers nationally, and they are well connected to Washington's, to the state governors, to the mayors, to the banks, and they're the ones who will gentrify Roxbury, and they're the ones who will displace the last black culture. Very tragic case to what happened to the Mourad's family after hard work to achieve. Part of the American dream is capitalism, is to own 276 units, to contribute to the community programs like the rowing team. I supported that in 1991. I'm the one who provided the space to Dr. Becky Brown. I'm the one who funded Dr. Becky Brown in excess of $3,000 a month, where I was already under budget by HUD, because I believed I wanted to make a difference